Our minorities, we want to engage in Latvian language for them to be able to participate in the discussions about certain issues, to show the diversity of our society, and we want them to do it in Latvian language in order to not create two communities, two information spaces, so one media environment, one information.
Definition of information space is the same, the information is the same, but in our information space there are two languages.
The public media is not shutting down the language itself, it's just changing the approach, how they will engage their audience.
From the media research we have the statistical information that, let's say, people over 50 years of age, they are not so keen to study new languages.
And as I see in our statistics, for example, that Latvian Radio 4, which is also a Russian language channel in public media, is not the main news source for Russian-speaking population. It's actually really in the middle.
But yes, in my dreams I believe that Russian language radio and television actually are not needed just for information delivering. I really hope all people living in Estonia would get needed information from public service broadcasting and private media channels in Estonian language.
Welcome everyone. My name is Kārlis Dagilis and you are listening Media and Society podcast. These episodes are a platform for in-depth conversations about ways people experience, think and feel about media. Aimed for professionals and media scholars, the podcast explores the diverse relationship between media, journalism and audiences in two Baltic states, Latvia and Estonia. Episode 6. How to address Russian-speaking audiences. Approaches of Latvian and Estonian media policymakers. In all our previous episodes, at some point we have tackled the topic of Russian-speaking minority in Latvia and Estonia, either from journalism perspective, either from audience perspective, also from these trust issues among media audiences. Therefore, it seemed only fair that we would try to dive more in-depth into this topic and continuing the tradition of inviting guests from both countries. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you with Kārlis Dagilis, advisor to the Latvian Minister of Culture on media policy, and Andres Jõesaar, media advisor for the Estonian Ministry of Culture. Nice to have you both on this program today.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
To begin with, could you each describe what is each country's media policy towards media content creation and provision in Russian language and towards reaching Russian-speaking minorities?
We are saying that our minorities, we want to engage in Latvian language for them to be able to participate in the discussions about certain issues, to show the diversity of our society. And we want them to do it in Latvian language in order to not create two communities, two information spaces. So one media environment, one information space. And we want this to happen both in the public media and also in the commercial media. So what we said regarding public media is that we need to change the strategy, how public media addresses minority language, minority audiences, and to kind of decrease the amount of Russian language among other minority languages. It was free will for the public media how they actually fulfill this. And for commercial media, we want to have more Latvian language programs also in these minority radio stations, mainly Russian language radio stations, to increase the music amount of Latvian music in these radio programs. Also content in Latvian language within, for example, Russian newspapers, etc. So this is the policy regarding minority language and how we want to address this topic in media environment.
And what about Estonians?
We don't have such a policy paper as Latvia has. We are trying to be as minimal as possible with all kinds of regulations. As you know, we are very liberal in this sense. But of course, still we have a media regulation and media policy in place. We are quite a lot of self-regulation driven. But regarding private media, this is self-regulation, it's not enough because we can see there is a market failure when we're talking about making commercial programs dedicated for minorities with Russian language as a home language. These radio stations, newspapers, or even television channels are not commercially successful, actually. They cannot exist. And therefore, the state has introduced a specific measure. It entered into force in 2022 when the full-scale war started in Ukraine. And the Estonian government decided to support private media, Russian language editorial teams. It's not about any kind of interference into editorial freedom. We don't tell the media houses what kind of information they should deliver or what kind of actions they will take. They have absolute freedom in this sense, and our support measure, which is 1 million euros per year, is just to support the editorial teams. And media houses themselves decide will they hire more journalists or what kind of actions they will do. But we are following if this measure is successful or not. We just follow the number of people which are on a daily or weekly basis using these media outlets. And this is the only measure. We will not go into the content delivered. This is up to editorial teams to decide what they are providing for these citizens. The aim of this one is to unite Russian language and Estonian language editorial teams. So we have the same aim, that the information field in Estonia should be the same for all citizens. Is it Estonian speaking, Ukrainian speaking, or Russian speaking? We want to see that media houses are responsibility sending or delivering quality media, balanced media, fact-based, and not to support any kind of propaganda coming from Russia. And this is the main aim. So, if in Latvia, as Kārlis said, that there is an aim is to have one united information space, so do I, but definition of information space is the same, the information is the same, but in our information space there are two languages, what are actually free because we are also delivering the same information in English. So, and this is for the private media. On the public service media, we have the long tradition with Radio 4, which was established already in 1994, a Russian language radio channel, and which 20 years later almost was accompanied by Estonian television Russian language program ETV+, especially targeting Russian language community. The debate about supporting or not supporting Russian language on public service broadcasting has been on almost 30 years. There are pro and contra arguments. One of these contra arguments is that if we will provide or continue providing Russian language content, then people which are following these channels never will learn Estonian. This has been one of these contra arguments. The proactive argument has been if we will provide interesting information, not information only, also entertainment and educational programs in Russian, then we will integrate these people into Estonian information space much more easily than to just wait when this new generation will learn Estonians and will have the language skills on a level which enables them to freely follow Estonian media. From the media research, we have the statistical information that, let's say, people over 50 years of age, they are not so keen to study new languages. Even they have lived in Estonia for all their life. There are still certain part of Russian language community which doesn't speak Estonian language fluently and they don't understand, and therefore expectations that this part of population will start following Estonian television in Estonian language or Estonian portals in Estonian language, it's not realistic. So, in one hand, this one information space, this is vital, this is really important that both communities have the same information available. And on the other hand, we are very realistic that part of Estonian society includes people who don't speak or understand Estonian language fluently, and from the side of Estonian state we are providing information also for these minority groups. And the results what we have gained from media research is showing that the trust towards public service, ETV Plus or Radio 4 channels has been quite on a good level. It has increased, and when we had a problem with Russian Federation television channels, which was most trusted information sources for a couple of decades, now we can see that after introduction of ETV Plus, actually ETV Plus has gained the first place, and it's a most important information source even for the people who don't speak Estonian. So we consider it as a success when we're talking about integration of Russian community into Estonian society.
You mentioned that it's unrealistic to build everything around one language. And in Latvian case, I guess we are going this direction by reducing actually content in Russian.
I just wanted to add that, yes, we are going in the direction that everyone can speak Latvian, and that's why we introduced also the changes in educational system that people will start to learn in schools, public schools, only in Latvian language. And the media policy also goes hand in hand. And as Andres mentioned, that Estonian media policy is self-regulated and it goes towards self-regulation. I wanted to add that it's also the policy of Latvia. There's no ban on Russian TV channels in Latvia or Russian radio channels in Latvia as long as they are working within a framework of professional, ethical, trustful journalism. And these are always looked by the self-regulation organization, and also if they don't do disinformation. So they are allowed to do so. We have a handful of radio stations that operates in Russian language. We have newspapers in Russian language. We have news outlets online in Russian language. So we don't do anything to close them down or regulate them somehow. And the only thing that's really been changing in the last couple of years is the strategy with public media, but it was also up to them, editorially independent decision, how they will approach the amount of Russian language that they produce. And this is the really different approach between Estonia and Latvia. So what kind of strategy will have the public media in both countries? And as I see in our statistics, for example, that Latvian Radio 4, which is also a Russian language channel in public media, is not the main news source for Russian-speaking population. It's actually really in the middle. The more often respondents say that they are using global social media, WhatsApp, Telegram, family members to get news about what's going on, and also other news online services in Russian language, and also a public media provider in Russian language online, the LSM Plus. So people listen to them, but it's not the main source for this audience.
Yeah, you mentioned already Latvian Radio 4 because the board of Latvian Public Media announced these big changes to Russian language provision, which also included news about shutting down Russian language radio station by the end of the year or beginning of next year. Yeah. Can you imagine something like that happen in Estonia? Andres, I guess no.
At the moment, I don't think that it will be the case in Estonia. Of course, the funding of public service broadcasting in overall is an issue, actually. It's not about these Russian language programs and so on. And if the pressure on public service broadcasting funding increases, then the management has the questions from where to take the savings. And of course, then it comes a question what kind of content could be delivered, what kind of programs will remain. But so far, I hope it will be no such a dramatic changes in the funding, and Radio 4 and ETV Plus will continue as they are doing right now. But of course, the economical pressure is quite a strong one, and this economical situation, it's not favorable towards public service broadcasting funding. But in a political level, we don't have a discussion that we should close, especially Russian content, or not to support private Russian media. And these discussions don't take place, at least not in a public sphere. Definitely, there are some people who believe that there shouldn't be any kind of support to Russian media. These people definitely exist, but the voice is quite low.
Andres already mentioned that in Estonia there are this financial support also for commercial media, for Russian-speaking media outlets, not only for public service media channels. In Latvian case, already years ago, we stopped financing media organizations that provide content on Russian language, and now we see that also in public service media, the content in Russian will most probably decrease. Do you see that something like that might happen in future, that Estonia might go also the other direction?
My hope is that actually all people living in Estonia will understand Estonian language. I hope this day will come, but again, the educational reform has just started. We have this was the first year when the whole educational system went over to teaching in Estonian language only, and what we can see is that has been quite challenging. First results from the fourth degree, which were announced last week, shows that not all the children going to the school and which should already understand Estonian language actually have learned Estonian, meaning that there is a huge challenge. A challenge still remains. But yes, in my dreams, I believe that Russian language radio and television actually are not needed just for information delivering. I really hope all people living in Estonia would get needed information from public service broadcasting and private media channels in Estonian language. But as far as the language skills are as they are, this kind of support for the media is reasonable.
Mm-hmm. And for Kārlis, the question is, aren't we trying to jump over too early to this future Andres is talking about?
Well, I don't think we are jumping somewhere. I think it has been a strategy for Latvia for more than 10 years since the debate or whether should we open a new TV channel in Russian language in public media. So we decided not to do, and we have not been supporting media content in Russian language in any case. But this decision to close down and decision by public media themselves to close down LR4, the radio channel in Russian language, it's not based on the political decision. It's based on the audience measurement decision, because they see that the audience is migrating towards these digital tools. So the public media is not shutting down the language itself. It's just changing the approach, how they will engage their audience, the minority language speaking audience. So they bet heavily on the digital landscape.
But there was no promise that there will be more content on digital platforms.
No, they are still producing the content in digital, and they are actually, I believe that they are going in the direction when they will try to engage this audience more. And it's two options how they can do it. Is either by promoting this content on the digital social media platforms or engaging the Russian-speaking audience in the content. For example, people who can speak both languages, who are authorities within this community, they need to participate in the programs. They need to participate in the content. It hasn't been done as much as needed, so there were two separate newsrooms, basically. Well, technically one, but Latvian Radio 4 operated really independently from the other. Now, I believe the public media will engage the journalists in other programs so that their voice would be heard more. Of course, and these journalists can speak Latvian language, and that's not a problem for them. Maybe not perfectly, but still they can express themselves, and that's how the community will be heard.
Coming back to the topic of today's episode, so how to address Russian-speaking audiences, because why it is important not to leave out these audiences, and how do you think how well these policies that are in place at the moment helps to actually include these audiences?
The one thing which made ETV Plus successful was the uniqueness, that it was a media talking to the local people and showing the local people and talking about the local issues. Pervõi Baltiiski Kanal and the other channels didn't talk about local people. They didn't understand what's actually happening in these local communities. And that was his key driver to gain the audience interest. And as long as Estonian media is talking about the issues which make sense, so to say, to the audiences, talking to their problems, bringing the local celebrities on screen and so on. This is the key and how we could gain the audience attraction for many years to come. This makes a huge difference, and without our support to this media, this will disappear. That's maybe it's a little bit different approach to the question, but the uniqueness being local, it's a key to solve the question. And if the language barrier will disappear in one day, as we hope, then its uniqueness will remain. Living in Estonia is uniqueness in itself.
To wrap up our discussion today, I wanted to ask, so you both are advisors, and let's imagine that you should go to your minister and suggest some things that still should be addressed and done regards Russian-speaking audiences in your country. What would be your suggestion? What the state might do? What media policy initiatives might be introduced or should be introduced to reach these audiences even better?
This is a very interesting question because our Minister of Culture represents not only the media, but she represents also the integration policy and also the culture, which is the Latvian language is the cornerstone of the culture. So in any case, those decisions should be very, very balanced between those three aspects: the language, the culture, the language, the integration, and the media policy. So whatever the decision or advice is, that we need to look really, really closely and to look at all the aspects of that decision.
Absolutely. Kārlis introduced Estonian media policy very well. We have exactly the same priorities, and for us now the critical question is success or failure. I hope there will be no failure of school system reform, because the introduction of Estonian language in all educational levels, this is really, really crucial. And if we are successful on this one, then the media policy will be definitely more supporting Estonian language and less support for the Russian language media is needed. In the process, we still continue to support actions which are aiming for one information sphere, that's information about Estonia and in Estonia should be the same for all communities, whatever language they are speaking. So my advice is more towards Ministry of Education, keep going and try to end up with a really, really good results. It's a huge task and unfortunately it took too long, but now we are starting it, and if this is successful, then for a media it will be much more easier to fulfill its remit.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Kārlis Dagilis and Andres Jõesaar was my guest today. Hopefully we will see some results earlier than in 20 years. So thank you once again, and let's keep our discussions in our next episodes about different topics.
Thank you. Thank you. Hope that artificial intelligence will not take over the role of host of podcasts in next years.
Yeah, but you never know. You never know. This podcast is recorded at Riga Students University Multimedia Studio and is part of a research project making sense of media, a non-media centric and open-ended approach to the study of media-related experiences and perceptions. It is funded by the RSU Internal and External Consolidation Project.